What's going on, guys? Welcome back to A&E Podcast. I'm Bailey Driscoll.
And I'm Tom Luthner, and today we're going to be doing something different. We're going to be covering our first ever NBA redraft. We did post it on Instagram, and we got yes over nose in the story. So we're going to do our first draft, and we're going to go with the worst draft of all time, and that is the 2000 NBA draft. So I'm going to go ahead and do my first pick. Bailey will then go ahead and do his 1 and 2. So my first pick, and we're going to disregard trades, by the way. Let me just give some ground rules. We're going to disregard trades that happen in the draft. So if somebody did get drafted, trade to another team, we're going to disregard that. We're just going to go, off of what team had what pick and who they would have drafted in our minds now. To start off, the New Jersey Nets at the time, they had the first pick in the draft, and they drafted Kenyon Martin originally. And I'm going to change that right now to go with a second rounder. And that second rounder is the original 43rd pick in the draft, a player who at his highest point in his career averaged 26.7 points per game, and that is Michael Redd. The Nets did end up going to an NBA Finals with the team that they had after getting Kenyon Martin. They had Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson, Jason Kidd, Kerry Kittles. And I know that Kerry Kittles and Michael Redd might, intertwine at the shooting guard position. But at your highest point to average 26.7 points per game, to give that to a championship team in a couple of years down the line, I think that he potentially could have been the best player in this draft.
I'm going to go right into my first pick. My first pick, I would have chosen Jabari Smith. I'm just kidding. Okay. I would have stuck with Kenyon at number 1. He was a good all-around player. Like you said, they made the finals. They didn't win, but he worked really well with that team, and he was just a really good overall player. I think they made the right choice with that one for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your pick at all. I have him going in the lottery. I didn't take him out of the lottery whatsoever. I didn't take him out of top 5 whatsoever. Great player. I just think, imagine giving Jason Kidd a 26.7 points per game scorer.
No, yeah.
How insane. And having Richard Jefferson eventually by his side would be amazing.
Yeah. At number 2, I have Jamal Crawford. Jamal Crawford, I think, is still just the second best player in this draft. Crawford had probably the longest career out of anybody here, by far the most consistent. He is the 6th man of the year. That's who he is.
Say with my second overall pick, I did the same exact thing. I went with Jamal Crawford, who was originally the 8th pick. He was the 8th pick to Cleveland, who ended up eventually trading him. The 3rd pick, I went with the former 16th pick, Hedo Turkoglu, a great player. Another guy in the Lob City Clippers, actually. He was part of that team. Eventually he ended up on their bench as a bench role, small power forward. A guy that at his highest averaged 19.5 points per game. You can't really argue, taking a guy at 16 at that point is a steal of the draft, in my opinion. One of the steals of the draft. There are a couple more, I believe, that went a little bit later than him. But to take that guy at 16, I'm going to move him to my 3rd pick. The Clippers, at that point, I believe Darius Miles might have been their pick.
Yeah.
He'll fit them more. He's a better scorer. A little bit of the bigger small forward, power forward. Darius Miles played the exact same position. I believe Hedo was a little bit bigger. So I'm going to take Hedo at my 3rd pick there, just off of knowledge too, seeing how Hedo played the game. When he was in Orlando, he was a demon.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Hedo at my 3 pick.
Yeah. With my 3rd pick, I went with your number 1 pick, Michael Redd. You explained it pretty well. I don't think he's better than Hedo, neither do you. So that's pretty much my thought process there. And then number 4, I went with Hedo. That's where I put him. So not far off from where you got him.
My 4, I went with original number 1 pick, Kenyon Martin, a team like Chicago, just coming off of the Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Scottie period. I think having another power forward who could put up 16.7, their highest season, and is a gritty power forward, he would thrive in that organization. You saw what they did with Dennis Rodman. You saw what they did with Horace Grant. You saw what they did with all these power forwards. Power forwards thrive in that organization regardless of who they are. You could even think about current day where players like Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter, who originally were there, were thriving for a little while and became trade assets. So I would put Kenyon Martin at my 4. If he would have fell that late, I think that he would have had a much better career. My 5 is somebody who was originally the 5 pick, stayed where he is. An 18.5 at their high points per game player at their highest, Mike Miller. Proved that he's a great shooter. Thrived in Orlando, made a career for himself playing alongside LeBron James at one point. Hitting clutch 3-pointers for LeBron, being that guy. I believe that he went to play in Vancouver as well. So, he was that shooter. I feel like he was the original spot up shooter after Reggie Miller. You have a player like Reggie Miller, Mike Miller came in and he was that original spot up.
He was like Klay Thompson before Klay Thompson.
Yes.
Yeah.
he was that guy. And before we keep going, I'm just going to give a shout out to, one of our favorite seltzer companies. I know we're not sponsored by them at all. Always have to give a shout out though. Vizzy Seltzers. If you guys drink, I know it's backwards on my screen. If you guys drink hard seltzers, one place I would go to is always go to Vizzy. They taste the most like fruit, so I have to just say it. And I'm going to give a huge shout out to Vizzy. So one of my go-tos, but go ahead with your 5 and 6, Bailey.
Okay. At 5, I do not have Mike Miller. He comes a little bit later. At 5, I'm going with Q Rich, Quentin Richardson. Quentin Richardson was a 3-and-D guy pretty much. I think he was just a very solid role player. And then right into number 6 is another similar guy, Darius Miles. I got Darius Miles at 6.
Yeah,
he was the one that went to the Clippers.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So my 6, I do have the former 17th pick in Desmond Mason, a guy that averaged at his highest the same amount that Quentin Richardson averaged in their highest seasons at 17.2 points per game. And he could have been a great player. Again, at the 17th pick to average 17.2 in your highest season, imagine being in a coaching system where you could have averaged 20, 25, and been that guy. Yeah. So I put him my 6. Actually, at my 7, Chicago, Quentin Richardson, who was the original 18th pick. Mm-hmm. Again, I just said him and Desmond Mason averages 17.2. Quentin Richardson, 3-and-D guy kind of, at this point in time. Quentin Richardson's an offensive player who could play defense. Mm-hmm. And like you said, him and Darius Miles are at the same talent level almost, where it became a rivalry kind of thing, and especially in the draft. Quentin Richardson, I feel like if he was in the right place at the right time, he could have been that guy, And so I feel as if Quentin Richardson was drafted a little bit earlier, he could have been a better player if he was in the right organization.
I'm going to go into my 7 now. I got your guy from top 5, Mike Miller. Like we talked about, he was that. I like the way I said it the best. He was Klay Thompson before Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
Obviously not as good as Klay Thompson, but he was a very, very similar player. Spot-up shooter, good defender, hit some big shots in his career.
I have to say, and I don't mean to cut you off, I feel like he paved the way for guys like Ty Hero, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, the shooters right now, especially in the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat fell in love with that role after Mike Miller was there.
Yeah.
Hit Mike Miller, Ray Allen, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Ty Hero. They're looking for those kinds of guys now.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And then to go into my 8, we got Desmond Mason. Like you were saying before, he's on a similar – all these guys, like I said, are on the same tier for me. You could put them in any order, and I think it would be acceptable because they all have really similar skills. Not skills, but similar skill levels.
Yeah, skill level play types, yes.
Yeah.
I feel like this draft was full of a lot of 3-and-D guys.
Yeah.
And again, I chose Desmond Mason at my 6, and I'm going to go on to my 8 right now. And my 8 was actually Courtney Alexander. Another guy that was late 13th pick, averaged 17 in his highest season. I'm putting him my 8 now. Again, you could probably say another 3-and-D guy. This draft, again, is arguably the worst draft of all time. I couldn't go beyond 15 players to even think about that were good enough. If you look into the best players in this draft class, some of them, there was a player that was an all-star who I'll get to later who shouldn't be an all-star. It was that kind of draft class. And I'll get to that when we're done with our players. But, another 3-and-D guy averaged 17 at the height of his career. So for him to do that, I think that 8 would be a fair fit for somebody that averaged 17. I feel like even nowadays, you don't even get the 8th pick to average 17. So to do that in 2000, which is a terrible draft class, if he was drafted earlier, who knows what he could have done, And from there, I'm going to go on to my 9. My 9 is Morris Peterson, who was originally the 21st pick in the draft. The height of his career, 16.8 points per game. He went to Houston at this point, which you'll probably be happy about. He went to Houston, which, think about it, a small forward, power forward, I believe Morris Peterson was, and you get him to pair up with a player like Yao Ming eventually, and Tracy McGrady eventually, and Shane Battier eventually. You get him to pair up with these kinds of guys and to average 16.8. Imagine what he could have brought to that team. That's a team that potentially could have won a championship if they had a 16.8 power forward.
Yeah.
So that's my 8 and 9.
Okay, so to go into my 9, I'm gonna go with the Long Island guy himself, Speedy Claxton. He's a pretty good point guard. He's a very floor general type guy. I think if he would have had maybe a better situation, his career could have panned out a little bit better. But yeah, he was a very good pass first guy. Put up solid assist numbers, put up solid scoring nights. I think he could have, in the right situation, been a top tier point guard, especially in this draft class.
Yeah.
Especially in this one. We've been doing a lot of like wings and power forwards, really, outside of like Jamal Crawford.
Yeah. He breaks that. He breaks that boundary in this draft class.
Yeah.
I feel like, again, it was a lot of 3-and-D, like small forward, power forwards in this draft class, and he's one of the. I think that there are only like 3-4 guys in this draft class that I put in the top 12 at least that are guards, and one of them is Jamal Crawford.
Yeah. And then to go into my 10, I'm gonna go with Deshaun Stevenson. He's another 3-and-D guy, shocker. Won a championship with the Mavs, I believe, in 2011. He was a very, very good defender and shooter for them. So, he really helped them out.
At my 10, I also went with the former 23rd pick, Deshaun Stevenson. And to think that he lasted a while in the league, man. Again, 11 years in the league to win a championship with that team. And he got minutes for that team, regardless if it was 8 to 15 minutes, to get that minutes on a championship team is impressive. Again, at the height of his career, he averaged 11.4. But at this point, he averaged 11.4, and I still took him over other players because I know what he's capable of doing.
Yeah.
Seeing him, and we ended up seeing a good amount of these players when we were, if you watched basketball earlier in your life, we're born in 2000, so this is our birth year draft class. But to go back and look at like players like, we watched Jamal Crawford, we watched Darius Miles, but Deshaun Stevenson was, one of the guys that made an impact on that team. He replaced Vince Carter's role in that team, and they ended up winning the championship with him instead of Vince Carter. Yeah. So I actually went with him in my 10. At my 11, I went with a player that averaged 14.0 points per game in his height of his career. Was the former 3rd pick. I went with Darius Miles to Boston at this point. So, and to go back to Deshaun Stevenson at 10 to Orlando, a team that would eventually get Shaquille O'Neal and Horace Grant, Penny Hardaway, Deshaun Stevenson's that two-way player for them, so that would go back to him. But to Darius Miles to Boston, a team that eventually became a championship team in 2009. I know it's years away, but if that's a player that they extended, another 3-and-D guy, 2-way guy defensively, he picked up that slack for a little bit of Paul Pierce not being able to play the best defense in the world. Ray Allen not being the best defender in the world. You throw Darius Miles as a big 2, and Ray Allen goes in for your shots, Darius Miles goes in for your defense. So that was my 11th pick.
Yeah. With my 11th pick, I'm up to 11, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I went with Morris Pearson is back like what you said.
16.8 points per game. You can't beat that, especially at 11. Yeah. And you would never thought that his height would be 16.8 points per game. So
yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
And then into my 12, this is the last spot that I went up to.
Okay.
Because I just don't even think anybody really after that deserves a shout out.
I went to 13, but
maybe they do. I don't want to be disrespectful to any of these guys. Also, I didn't really grow up with most of these guys either, so I don't want to be disrespectful to any of these players. But Courtney Alexander is the last guy that I had on my list. So
okay, so I went up to 13, so I'm going to say my 13, and I have one honorable mention, and it's not even because I want him to be.
Better be Jabari Smith.
My 12th is Stormile Swift, who at his height averaged 11.8. He was the original 2nd pick, fell down to 12. Maybe he wouldn't average 11.8. Who knows? At the time it's Dallas with the pick. Maybe you make him into a good player, around Dirk Nowitzki, Nick Van Exel at the time. Maybe you don't. You're falling in the lottery. I don't believe that he was a 2nd-round pick, especially with the height of your career being 11.8. Yeah. My 13, though, I'm going to go with Speedy Claxton, who averaged 13 at the time. Orlando, another Orlando player. You play him next to Penny Hardaway. One of them plays a 2, one of them plays a 1. As I said, they got the 10th pick with Deshaun Stevenson in my book. Now you pair up, or actually this would be the end of their time there, but you pair up Penny Hardaway, Speedy Claxton, Deshaun Stevenson, Shaquille O'Neal, Horace Grant.
Yeah.
Another championship roster, two picks in the lottery. And my last honorable mention before obviously Jabari Smith, because his son's goated, but the only other All-Star in this year, Jamal Magallor. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. His height of his career was 11.7 points per game. The 2003-2004 season, he was an All-Star. I didn't even know this personally. I did not know that Jamal Magallor was an All-Star. And I don't even think he was a lottery pick if you look at statistics.
I don't think most people knew that.
Statistically, if anybody in this draft class averaged the points they averaged their height of their career in 2003-2004, they'd be an All-Star. Wow. And supposedly Jamal Magallor was an All-Star in 2003-2004. Again, I don't know. I looked it up on Basketball Reference, and they gave me that Jamal Magallor was an All-Star.
Hey, Basketball Reference is pretty accurate.
And that would be my 14th pick. I don't know what team had the 14th. I didn't go that deep in the draft. I went with the 13 players I think deserved a spot, and it would be Jamal Magallor at my 14th.
Wow.
So yeah, but that's what we have for this draft. Again, possibly the worst draft of all time. I don't think there was anything that record-breaking or groundbreaking in this draft. Again, Jamal Crawford, a beast. I don't think that he did anything. He's a sixth man. That's it. That draft should be known for the sixth man of the year. And Deshaun Stevenson, who I believe is the only player to win a finals in this video. I may be completely wrong. Off the top of my head,
Mike Miller won a chip, didn't he?
Mike Miller. I apologize. Mike Miller is the only player to win a chip. Jamal Crawford is the only player to win an award. Got that mixed up in my mind. Maybe Michael Redd won an award. Maybe he won Rookie of the Year. I don't know who won Rookie of the Year this year, but all I know if it's not Michael Redd, they don't deserve it. Unless it's Hito. Hito's the only other player in my mind, or Jamal Crawford that deserves it. Probably Jamal Crawford, I would say. But yeah, so that's the end of this redraft. We're gonna go on to some more, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we're gonna get to them. And we got some good upcoming ones for you guys. I know that I wanted personally the 2008 draft. I know Bailey wanted the 14 and the 2009. So we'll get to those as soon as we can. And yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode of the first ever redraft. We decided to go with the worst draft of all time, and our first ever redraft might not be the best idea.
Can't get worse than that. Fully up from here.
There you go. Can't get worse than that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for checking in. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll catch you on the next episode of A&E Redrafts. Peace, guys.
See you guys.
Dope.